Cool. So I'm James. This is our meeting on Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse.
And I'm Kelsey.
I'm Ivor.
And I'm Elle.
Sweet. So we wanted to start with this. I guess what struck me immediately, like this is a film that talks about glitch like is constantly engaging with this idea. And like within the first few frames, like when I saw that they had chosen to glitch the Marvel logo, I was like, that is a really bold take. Like that's a bold move for them to make because Marvel's this like massive institution of film. And like I think they continue with this relationship of like glitching capitalism, like they do this with like the Coca-Cola label. But yeah, I wanted to know what you guys thought about that, like the glitching of the Marvel logo like instantly before the film even starts.
So I have stuff to say, but Elle, if you have a quote.
One thing that really struck me over in like one of the articles that we kind of read in preparation for this movie by Sean Cubitt was that like glitch in code, like whether its source is human error, natural contingency, or technical artifact, changes the performance of the program. And basically what he's saying is the entire thing, especially to initially start out with a glitch, is that this whole entire thing is performative, which I find incredibly fascinating because we're all aware of glitch. Glitch occurs every day. I mean, on Snapchat, on Facebook, on just regular old phone calls, things glitch because there are mistakes. So we're aware of it, and there's already a familiar connotation there. We see the error, mistake, maybe a little bit of spookiness. So for this to occur in like a kid's movie outside of horror context, and the fact that it occurs on the logo specifically is purely setting us up for the performative. And I think that really kind of helps get us in the zone and speaks on the risk that this movie is trying to blatantly hit us over the head with, which is pretty exciting to watch.
I think that's really interesting with the Marvel logo, especially like as you said, like logos in terms of like what a logo and in graphic design that's supposed to represent being glitched. Also with Marvel, I would say that Into the Spider-Verse is not necessarily associated with Marvel as strongly as like the MCU is, and like the Avengers movies and all of those are made to be perfect. Like right. They're made in a way that they need to be, like they're the perfect commoditizable, or I don't know if that's a word, but like object. So yeah. They're incredibly polished, tons of money is put into them, and it's so interesting seeing like right off the bat showing that is being glitched. Like that is, and also the other thing that James mentioned is the Coca-Cola logo, another object which is supposed to be this perfect like American drink, is also being glitched. And so I think that's a really interesting way again to start it off.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that this movie sometimes it does glitch really well in that it's kind of like movie watching is a kind of trance. And when something naturally glitches, as in when it's not a man-made glitch, it almost takes you out of that and makes you aware of your own watching. And so when it comes to the logo, it makes you aware that there's a production and a performance, like you guys said. And those moments I think are fantastic. But then there are moments where it's very evident that the glitch is a style. Like the last fight scene, to me, the glitch was entirely a background. It was an effect.
Right.
It almost kept you in, where I truly believe that glitch should almost take you out.
Mm-hmm.
What do you guys think?
I'm like wrestling with that.
But the spider, I think, was effective. You know, the
right.
spider, when it came down and it glitched, you're like, oh,
like that was jarring.
Like out.
But
it's going to break him out of his rut, of his life that he feels trapped in. This is going to set him free. It's almost like this is the thing that's going to totally distort his sense of reality. And that's why I think it was really effective.
Right. So you're saying you don't like that we like adjust to the glitch. You think it should always be this like disruption that is scary. Yeah. Sorry, Elle.
What were we going to say?
No, I think that I'm so happy that you brought up this point, because this whole time I also kind of glitch in the medium that it's presented here in this movie sort of acts as an interruption, which is really incredible because like the glitch in and of itself is, again, like acting as a mistake, but it's never put in a way that's meant to overwhelm us, even though the glitch itself is an occurrence from something in the system being overwhelmed. It's always within our comprehension. It's just meant something to kind of like a pause or a stab. And same with the spider. It's not overwhelming. And I don't know what to make of that yet, which I'm really excited to kind of explore in this discussion. But
it's not overwhelming for you, but for the characters that experience it. So like it's used as a narrative device in that like all of these characters, which are so well characterized and like pretty immediately lovable, they're glitched. And so like when you're seeing they're glitched and they're experiencing that like stabbing effect. It literally, when they're glitched, it seems like they're being stabbed. And so as we like through their like emotion tied up in that, their physical pain, it like almost acclimatizes us to glitched. So at the end, Kelsey, as you were saying, when there's that huge fight that's surrounded by glitch, where we've been like at the beginning, the spider is so jarring because we see the glitch and we're like, we know what glitch means. It means that something's wrong. And by the end, we've been acclimatized to that. And I mean, this is just an idea. I'm not like
great point. We're done here. I'm just
yeah. But like I think that's so interesting is like how that's done. Yeah.
I think talking about the characters and their characterization is actually, like you said, very important. I almost find that if you take our own definitions of glitch and you apply them to the narrative, glitch is the computer's failure to fully fail. And I think that's what makes Miles so lovable, is that you constantly see him fail, but it's enjoyable. You know, it's almost like if he were to completely fail, if he never had that big hero moment at the end, it would have been really disappointing and it would have been too much of a failure. So what's your take on failure in this movie? Because I think it's very layered.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think I like am so interested to hear what you guys think. I understand Miles as like a glitched being within this film. Like his like biracial like existence at this like predominantly upper class white school, where he's like been placed in away from his like school with like the people that like are he says at one point, like at some point he says something about like, I want to be where like the real people are. Like this school isn't like these people aren't real to me, which is so fascinating because it brings in ideas of like authenticity. But there was this super like revealing moment when he's walking into his new like private school, I think, that he like tests into, where one of the kids like says to him, "Your shoes are untied," and he's like, "I know, it's a choice." Which I was like, he is purposely glitching himself. He's like, not only is that like a larger cultural like practice, but like that's like you're choosing to live like this small little disruption to your presentation is like a purposeful glitch. And the way he embodies that is super fascinating. Yeah, I don't know. I'm wondering if you guys thought about that.
I think that's such an interesting point, especially when the first character, I mean, Miles has the spider which glitches, but the first character that actually physically glitches is a cis white man who in his world, like, who is a character that is not like fundamentally glitched, but like Miles is seeing this like cis white man glitching physically, like this like that weird like duality. So and then like as it transition, I'm not totally sure where I was going, like where to go with that point, or if you guys have ideas. But I thought that was really interesting, and how he's the only one that isn't actually physically glitching. But yeah, as you said, his like his identity in all of these different ways, or maybe not his identity, but like parts of him in all of these different ways relate back to that.
Totally.
Do you think his uncle taking the mask off was shattering enough to have a gaze? Like, what was your take on the masks in this movie? As long as we're on to a new topic, if anyone wants to speak on what we were speaking on before.
So this is a slightly kind of off topic, but not really. I was actually just watching a really incredible like video on my own time a couple days ago about the concept of masks and villainy and heroism in film, and we were talking a lot about how like micro expressions, and I think this film does a really good job of capturing like character micro expressions, even though it's still animated. And I think it was talking about how villains always have the bottom half of their face covered so that you can see like the microisms of their eyes, like always resounding in like films before that in like the 1940s and 50s, the bottom face is covered. And for heroes such as like Batman, the eyes are always covered, whereas the mouth is typically left exposed. And I thought that it was really interesting with this film in particular, how like Spider-Man's entire face is covered. And so in the concept with the uncle, like taking off his mask and stuff too. And I personally thought that moment, I don't know, I kind of saw it coming.
Yeah, I guess
just because I've been brainwashed by my education.
Elle, was this your first time seeing it? Was this your first time seeing it? Oh, so you knew it was coming. Okay.
Yeah, but I'm talking like the first time I experienced that moment.
Yeah.
Yet my heart still stopped because the uncle still had this very significant, like almost glitch of sound that followed him everywhere throughout the film that always interrupted everything. So this huge like embodying, like, I don't know if that's a real word, but I'm gonna go with it. This huge embodying character had just like, you felt like he was a freight train just going around and just tearing up the place just through audio. And for him to take his mask off and for everything to just go silent and for him to be a normal person again, I felt glitched out of that moment because of that huge jarring like crash of reality. And I felt like the character because of like just his expression. You saw all of his everything at once, and it was just a very overwhelming from the alien to the human in a very swift moment. So
yeah,
I wonder if not seeing the eyes increases our sense of gaze. I wonder if the hero has less of that because of what you just said.
So like this, because they're masked, you can't tell if they're actually looking at you or not. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Whereas like the villains, I guess, they're more scary because there's this level of uncertainty. Like you don't understand them maybe as easily, or you can't read their emotions as much, or you don't see eyes as well. So your sense of who's looking back, of who this person is a little bit more distorted. Whereas I think the mouth, I mean, if you're deaf, you look at the mouth to understand, like the mouth smiling is they're both very expressive. It's hard to understand why those choices are made. Maybe you know better than I do, Elle, but.
It was interesting. Kind of, I mean, I don't know, this is just a random, like could be totally unrelated, but in sign language, the bottom of the mouth is the feminine portion of the mouth, and the top half of the face, or the bottom portion of the face is like used to like connote like for nephew it's up here, and for niece it's down here. And I thought that was interesting in terms of like where the mask is placed on whatever that means. It could go either way, but it's just, I thought that was interesting.
So I definitely think we could talk about this all day, but I have a question regarding another thing that occurred in the article by Sean Cubitt was that glitch a lot of times acts as a very small form of like revolt, and a lot of times glitches occur in a very moment to act as it promotes the viewer or even the person who's experiencing it in order to forget the accidental nature of glitches. And I was wondering, because I don't think that this personally translated a lot through the movie. Whenever a glitch occurred, it kind of heightened a moment. It didn't necessarily take away. And I was wondering what you guys potentially thought of that sort of situation where the because again, like it acts as an interrupter. What did this interrupter do in the moment?
Right. I think it makes me think about the other reading that we were assigned, like Legacy Russell, who I think is so cool. She does like work on glitch within like context of like the body and gender, as well as like queerness. And she talks a lot about this idea of like people who like aren't within a gender binary, or people who are like raced differently, like queer, like they fail to function for a machine that was not built for them. Like they refuse this rhetoric of like inclusion, and are not like we're gonna wait for the world to make space for them. So they glitch the space that they are in. They like create that space for themselves. And I see that a lot in this film of like purposefully creating space, especially with Miles and his uncle. Like the act of spray painting on a wall in the subway like system is like you're glitching that, so you're putting art onto that space that is not like supposed to, quote unquote, like supposed to be there. So I see that a lot through this like glitched existence, like creating space where be like inserting your identity into that space.
I love that you brought this up. I think about this so much, especially right now when you think about like, you know, so many people referring to the Constitution and all these things that were built for certain kinds of people. And so to go back to a document, for example, that is constantly made for certain kinds of people, you kind of want to break from that. Like, I think Glitch has, or I guess when it comes to Miles, to bring it more back to the movie, Miles 100% creates space for himself in a world that wasn't really built for him. Laws, a school, I mean, everyone at that school is white. And for him to just walk in, and then for him to walk in with a cop yelling his name from behind him, it was like,
it's
that
complicated.
to me was so shattering. And that almost feels more shattering than the glitch in the movie. I felt like the moments where they, you know, the talk of other dimensions, the characters coming from other spheres, that to me was way more shattering in a lot of ways.
Yeah, well, when I'm forgetting his name, like the big, massive main villain, who's awesome, but like I'm forgetting his name. When he shoots the uncle,
Fisk or something.
Yeah, Fisk.
Fisk, I think,
yeah. When he like shoots the uncle with like a straight up bullet, like it's such a shattering moment because suddenly it becomes like just another like disposable black body like lying on the alleyways of a city. Like, and the fact that they chose to specifically use a gun when like we had seen these weird fictional lasers, like laser guns beforehand, like very intentionally, I think is like that was super disrupting for me.
He even said you're cheating, which I thought was insane when he was like, you can't use a gun, that's cheating. You know?
Yeah. I just thought that was really fascinating for sure.
Yeah, that scene was so striking when they were in that alleyway. That was like so upsetting.
Yeah.
I think it goes back to what you were saying too before, just like the state of things right now. And you know, the cop, that to me, like, does anyone want to speak about the cop? Because that was included for a very specific reason.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's so complicated. I was thinking about it a lot for like his dad to be like black man who's also a cop serving the like New York Police Department. Although interestingly, they chose, I don't know if I like picked on this tiny detail. They like it's PDNY and not NYPD. And I was like, there's and maybe it's just like part of this idea that the world is a little bit off because it's this like glitched reality. But I was like, you're doing something here. The police department is like, it's a little bit different. But yeah, this idea of like his dad being this like policing authority figure in his life, and he's like very much trying to escape that, is super palpable and I think important to point out.
I thought, so the PDNY thing really stood out to me, especially in like I'd be really curious to see if there's any details of that later on. I didn't look for that, like when they were at the end with all the dimension stuff. But I thought that was really interesting in how like this film like took little things that we're familiar with and warped them in subtle ways, and I think the way that and I'm sure that there are many other little details like that. The PDNY thing also stood out to me, but like in presenting like this reality and then glitching it, the fact that it's already not like totally familiar. There are already things that were kind of like that are out of place. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
I wanna go into like quickly. So we haven't talked about really the gaze yet.
Right.
And I'm wondering, are there like with specific visual glitches, do those ever like come close? Because for me, I didn't experience the gaze in this film, and I didn't really see any characters experiencing the gaze, except maybe Miles's dad when he saw his brother, or had when Miles's brother was shot. Moments like that could potentially be gaze-like, but I don't think moments of gaze are specifically related to like glitch being presented as a style or an aesthetic in this film. Glitch didn't have that effect on me in the way that it was presented in this film. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that.
Yeah. I similarly, I largely understand glitch as this like ambiguous looking that like takes one out of the context that they're in and like makes them aware that like they're vulnerable and they don't exist like happily within this little like stream of life that they're living. I thought like weirdly enough, like I feel like Miles may have experienced the gaze in that scene, like whenever all of the other spider people are like glitching around him and he's not, and he's the one that's like the same, or like that's staying like unmoved. I saw that as like a super powerful like glitch moment, because none of the other characters, like other spider people, like quote unquote like belong in that reality, in that universe. Like they're like literally being glitched and that's actually physically hurting them. But Miles is the one who like really truly does not belong. Like his idea, like he's the one in my mind that like is the actual authentic glitch, and the other spider people are glitched as a result of being displaced into this universe. But they like kind of have that explanation for it, whereas Miles, like, he has nowhere else to put that. Like that's just who he is. So that felt very gaze like to me.
This is more of a thematic glitch, but it was hands down not a mistake that the power that he got was to turn invisible.
Yeah.
Like, of all the characters. So
that hurts. Like yeah. That's
Yeah,
really-
I think I was gonna say, in terms of like the invisibility, and if in this world you could see Miles as a sort of objet, or specifically that power, his ability to go invisible. Like in my mind, the glitch is a sort of a stain or something on like in your field of vision that like causes a traumatic moment of seeing the real, or seeing yourself in the real, and seeing yourself as not like the real, as or a sense of real as not actually in the space that you live. And like Mile as this character who, as you said, is like an authentic glitch, like removing himself from real, like almost removing himself from the visual field, I think is definitely like is gaze like in its nature, or at least like potentially gaze like. Yeah,
For sure.
Yeah. I really see that. I think that's a really great. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'd like to talk a little bit more about Real, if you guys are interested, just because I think there are a lot of moments in this movie, like when the original Spider-Man looks into the machine. I think the machine is kind of like the tool for the Real, and I think him looking and seeing something that no one else knew for a while what he was seeing, that kind of gave glimpses of real. This whole aspect of other dimensions coming into play makes you very aware that there's a lot more that you don't see that's out there. You know, like what we don't see with a visible eye doesn't mean it's not there, it still is. And it's a lot harder to talk about like the real is. But do you need that, like, those real shattering moments to get there? I think that I'd love to talk about the machine if anyone has anything to say.
Go for
Yeah.
it.
I feel like my immediate thought is like I think a lot about this idea of like the machine, and again, and now I'm like thinking about race again, but like the machine bringing back people from other dimensions, like, because the whole like the main villain's like, who has this super tragic and like fascinating backstory, where the whole idea is this, he like wants to like bring back his wife and his son, but he can't break out of this perpetuation of violence. I was like, this is so, again, I was like, this is talking about race and policing, like, because he, like, we get that moment when they're passing through the machine in the subway car, and he's battling with Miles, and the mother and son appear again, and it's that, like, that cycle of violence perpetuates again, and they're again traumatized by seeing him like chokeholding this young boy, and like the inescapability of that cycle. Like, you can't bring people back. Like, this is like a violent reality that keeps happening, and I felt like the machine almost embodies that kind of logic, that kind of thinking, which is super sad but very, very important.
That's something that,
Go ahead.
yeah, absolutely.
I
That
agree.
was, yeah, also really well articulated. Something about the machine, I feel like that aspect of revealing one's like the destructive cycles one gets into, in the way that it happened to Fisk, is more gaze-like and more revealing of the real than I would say, than in, this is just how I think of it, than like other dimensions, because with other dimensions you can kind of understand them, you can learn about them, whereas the real is such a like almost reflection of something that's like it feels unknowable. And while there are infinite like dimensions that or as it is presented in this film, I'm not going to make any claims about the universe, but the way that it's presented in this film, like all of these other characters come from those dimensions, and all of those other characters are like understandable, they're knowable, you get to know them. And whereas like with Fisk, when he's in this like that cycle of violence being revealed to him that he probably didn't realize that was something that he did, having like seeing that is much more, I don't know, to me, a moment of the real than
Yeah,
stuff. But
I'm wondering,
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, what were you gonna say, Kelsey?
So do we think that the machine is a tool for the real? Do we think that the machine gives us flashes of the real? Do you think its destruction was a part of it? When the machine was destroyed, it's kind of like, I feel like there's so much going on that I can't even verbalize, which I think is another part of the real. You know, you can't really talk about the real because it's such a void. It's what we don't understand. It's what we can't put ideology to. It's what we can't put meaning to. And I think that's why I keep coming back to it, because I truly don't understand the real. I don't think anybody really does. But I truly think this machine really kind of was there to show us like there's more going on here, you know?
Ella, what were you gonna say?
There's a very strange moment that kind of happens and then doesn't blatantly happen again later in the film. But once Miles is bitten by the spider, there's this moment where like the fourth wall gets broken, where he's kind of like pounded with the, like, I almost want to call them lyrics of comic book words, and he's like, what am I hearing in my head, like why am I hearing that? And I thought that was really, really interesting, kind of like a weird glimpse into like predestination and like what is under our control. And I think that kind of also somewhat like ties into the real, because I saw that scene and a lot of people were like, oh wow, he's a Spider-Man now. Wow, he's involved. He's the main character. That transition from nobody to somebody. But I saw that and I was like, man, is this kid like not having a choice? Like I don't know what's going on. And I don't really know what to make with that, but like it's also like that break of the gaze, or not even break of the gaze, like overexposure to the gaze for that character in that moment. I'm not really entirely sure what to make of that.
Yeah. No, it's super interesting because he's walking through the hallway and he's having these thoughts, and then at one point I think, and it's super quick, he like turns around and he like sees that and he's like, what? And then like it moves forward. But yeah, this idea of like the and I feel like that's what Glitch does a little bit. Like it peels back it's not like it peels back this idea that you're just looking at an image and shows you that it's actually just a collection of like code letters and symbols and numbers. And he's like turning around and realizing that like, is he in a film? I don't know. Like maybe that's not what they're actually saying, but like he's definitely having a similar moment of like recognizing his own place, his own position within this film, within this like that something is up going on with his position as a Glitch. Yeah.
I also think, oops, sorry, Kelsey.
Go ahead if you have something to add to that.
Very, very like a sentence, but I think that also like that moment kind of plays into like the subconscious fear that we all who are living in the 21st century have, that we're all living in a simulation. So I don't know, that's really it.
Yeah, for sure.
I was just gonna say that like Miles has all this power in him. To me, I mean, from the very start, but once he gets a hold of this power from the spider, he has it throughout the majority of the film, and he has everything within him to fight the bad guy from the start of getting bit to the finish. But he doesn't get proper instruction. He doesn't get, even when his the other Spider-Mans from other dimensions try to teach him how to become the ultimate Spider-Man, he can't do it because they're not instructing him properly. They're not giving him good resources. They're essentially like beating the shit out of him. Like they're not helping him in ways that actually bring out his strengths. And in the end, he has to figure it out himself. They tie the main character down, which I thought was extremely unique. I've never seen a movie where the main character was so removed from value. Like nobody saw value in him until he was this strong, super over the top Spider-Man, you know? Like he was kind of a joke and a lovable character before, but he became this powerful, like very obviously powerful guy in the end.
As bad as this sounds, I saw that scene and I instantly went, yeah, he's this young Black boy. Like this is what he deals with every day. And I kind of think that was important. To what degree for the viewers, I'm not sure, but that's, I think, a consequence of race that was very subtly put in there.
Well, when they were in the woods and the white Spider-Man was like, okay, this is exactly how you do it. You want to release and then you want to throw and then you want to, you know, that kind of, and then he got it instantly. And it was like a white guy has to teach a young Black boy how to do something that he already knows how to do deep within him. You know, it's like, I mean, if you think about insects or animals, like a lot of what people do is instinct. You know, a lot of things don't need to be taught. But this idea that like a white person has to teach you something in order for you to harness your own power was really upsetting but effective to me, you know?
Yeah. And like, I don't know, maybe that's just, is that like a necessity, like a necessary evil of like the superhero film? Like, do you have to, like, is that like do this kind of arc where you start from like not really understanding your power, not really getting what you're doing, to this like position of like, I'm an expert and I can turn invisible and be electrical now? Like, is that just like an arc that we have to like accept? I wonder, like it because that's a really good point. Like I'm not sure.
I don't watch enough, I guess, superhero movies to really know. To me, it just screamed issues of race. But again, that maybe was more heightened for me because I don't watch many superhero movies.
Yeah. Cool. I guess like to start wrapping things up, I was wondering if you got like to bring it back to this idea of like corporatization and like capitalism a little bit. Like I was wondering if you also, I like sensed this kind of like sinister, like my one, I really love this movie, and the thing that I picked up on that I was like kind of uneasy about was this like constant presence of like commodity and capital, like this idea that like when you enter the universe you're like thrown into Times Square specifically is like that is the center of the world, is like this like huge embodiment of like capitalism and consumerism and like screen technology everywhere, specifically like hitting the Coca-Cola sign. I don't know, it like I was wondering, is it like this idea that we all revolve around, and I was like, are they critiquing this, or are they just perpetuating this pattern of like that we're all revolving around this idea of like consumer culture and capital, and even the John Mulaney's little pig character says like, that's all folks, and then they're like, is he allowed to say that legally, which like was a funny joke, but also I was like, you're really actually one, like it made me think about like what are the legal and like consumerist implications and like restraints on creativity and creative expression. I don't know, I like that kind of like struck me. I was wondering if you guys also thought about that.
I don't want to like risk going on too far of a digression, but I thought it was really interesting because like when Miles is going through the whole like Dark Night of the Soul part of the movie where he's just like, wow, my life sucks, I can't do anything. He was surrounded by poverty. Everything was very gray and brown, and I was very kind of like just struck by him walking through like these dirty streets. And then the instant he gets his abilities and he is that Spider-Man that he always like wanted to be, that everyone else wanted him to be, he's falling through Times Square with like pink and super bright, you know, fluorescent lights that are the brightest, most perfect the film looks at any point, with like that music going on. So I think you're definitely onto something in regards to like commodity being promoted as like perfection. And I think that was very jarring. That was jarring for me to watch because I was like, what are they trying to say here?
Yeah. I also think I agree absolutely. And it's like incredibly at this scale for a film to like escape from capitalism, especially within the like it is definitely, there are things that it is so hard when you exist in a structure of capitalism, especially to this degree in film. It's hard to not promote that. But I think like just one thing, by having a non-white body as the lead of this film, that like that's anti-capitalist to some extent.
Right.
And I think that is like, it is, there are things, I mean, I'm not saying that it negates or contradicts the things that this film does otherwise, but I think that's like important. And the way that representation is shown through this film in different ways, I think that is anti-capitalist. So it is, I wonder how much the like pro-capitalist things are intentional or just a product of the environment in which it was created in, which is not necessarily better. It's just different. It's a different scale. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think that then that brings us back, I think, to what we were talking about in terms of like him existing as a glitch and like this gaze. I don't know. I think that like that rounds it out pretty cleanly. Does anyone have anything else that they want to talk about real quick? I'm feeling good.
Yeah,
I feel like we
that was a good discussion.
Sweet. All right.
Great.
And
Thank you so much.